One of the general guidelines for study of the Gospels is that in any pronouncement or teaching attributed to Jesus, the more offensive it is, the more likely it is to have come directly from his mouth. Editors and apologists tend to smooth the story for easy listening. When the harsh word is retained, usually it's because it speaks with exceptional authority. Let the dead bury their own dead. Leave the dead to bury the dead. It would be difficult to overstate how troubling that word may have been to a first-century Palestinian Jew. For generations, when the Jews didn't have a land or a home, when they lived in exile or under occupation, when the story was just about all they had, for them, as for so many of us, remembering our mothers and fathers, telling that story of faithfulness, honoring our history gave us hope through times when we really needed some hope. That God had not, that God would not abandon us. When they came up from slavery in Egypt to a new land of promise, did not they bring the bones of Joseph with them? Never could they, never can we ignore the generations who have gone before. How can we reckon the meaning of where we are now if we ever allow ourselves to forget where we came from? The road that was paved and the price that was paid. Today we deal with a pronouncement as difficult and troubling as anything we ever hear from Jesus. So challenging and unpleasant that most of us, most of the time, will simply refuse to deal with it. Bracketed as metaphorical speech and thereby dismissed as insignificant. Leave the dead to bury the dead does not make it into the Hallmark or Reader's Digest versions of Christian teaching. At first hearing, it sounds uncaring or even cruel. Jesus, I have heard your call, and your faithful follower I would be, but please allow me just a bit of time to go home, to honor my father, to tend to my family, to deal with our grief. But in context, well, it may be even more than just that bit of time. Dad might not be dead yet. It may be that the would-be disciple is asking to go home to see him out, to finish up Dad's last chapter, however long that might take, to be truly unencumbered. Then, finally, free to follow Jesus. At this point, I will offer a little bit of personal experience. I am the son of a family with a very strong and long sense of its story and history. And my dad died when I was 16 years old. And until I committed to being myself answering God's call to my life. Until then, Dad's last chapter just kept going on and on and on and on. Until I made my commitment forward, there was no resolution of the past. The answer is no. Leave the dead to bury the dead. My face is set for Jerusalem, to the completion and fulfillment of my teaching and my work with you. You talk about taking a moment for orderly transition, a journey toward progress, but this is the journey of transformation, not progress. And the moment wherein I am giving my life, giving myself for a new life in which even death would be transformed. There is no arresting the moment or turning back. The call of this day is the promise of tomorrow in God's transforming love right now. We are headed to Jerusalem. Leave the dead to bury the dead. I know he loves me and I love him, but sometimes I really don't like Jesus very much. Is there no dignity in the past? No memory we should honor, no history of God's grace and the human faithfulness that should continue to guide us into the future? Well, of course there is. Getting ready for today, I ran across a marvelous sermon preached by the Reverend John Thomas, former president of the United Church of Christ, now a columnist and sometimes member of the staff at Chicago Theological Seminary. In this sermon, John refers to Roger Shin, one of the key figures in the birthing of the United Church of Christ, and for many years, a distinguished professor of ethics at Union Theological Seminary. John quotes Shin, "Every time I look back, I see the eyes of my forebears steadfastly looking forward. Every time I look back, I meet the eyes of my forebears steadfastly looking forward." As Christians, every time we look back, we see the eyes of our forebears steadfastly looking forward. We cherish them, we learn from them, we give thanks for them, and with them we turn our gaze toward the future, where we will continue to meet the God who is still speaking, where we will continue to search out and struggle through what it means to be a united church that is diverse and inclusive, continuing to find ourselves in trouble for the gospel, driving forward in a march of passion and purpose that is now and forever. Remembering our yesterdays for people of faith should always be remembering tomorrow. For we stand in a long line of saints who look with us, as if over our shoulders, toward the future with eager expectation and hope. Leave the dead to bury the dead. That's not cruel. It's just the truth. It's the truth for those who would look forward with pride in the past and hope for the future. The truth for those who would join in the coming kingdom of God. The truth for those who would make the world new. Until we make our commitment forward, there is no resolution of the past. To follow Jesus is to be committed to transformation. Led from death to life, from falsehood to truth, from despair to hope, from fear to trust, from hate to love, from war to peace. We sing it easily. God has given us the courage to live it too. And this is the time. This is the day. We can never fully receive the gift unless we would give ourselves to that march of purpose and passion, not found by arresting the moment, managing the madness, or somehow finding a way to turn back, to make it all as it was, only better. The call of this day is the promise of tomorrow in God's transforming love right now. We are people fabulously gifted. Fabulously gifted. And we should always remember that and be grateful and recognize that the best of it empowers us to give, to be givers, creators, lovers, witnesses to the goodness of God at work in the world. So may your giving this day be in that spirit as the ushers come forward now to receive our offerings.